mi gente, ¿cómo se encuentran? Mi nombre es Alba Mar, me pueden decir Alba. El nombre del canal se llama Seriela. Estamos aquí para hablar de libros, algunos de ellos en español desde Puerto Rico. Hello people, my name is Alba Mar, you may call me Alba. The channel name is Seriela and we're here to talk about books, and some of them in Spanish from Puerto Rico, except that not today. First of all, I want to welcome all the new subscribers. Bienvenidos y bienvenidas. Today we're going to talk about an extremely important book. My first nonfiction read that has been finished for this nonfiction November. No Friend But the Mountains by Behrouz Boochani is the first book that I finished for nonfiction November, as I said, and it was a buddy read with Veronica at V's Reads and Rambles, who helped make this whole experience much more meaningful for me, even fun, although we both struggled in some parts. But we did it together, and that was the important thing. Thank you so much, Veronica. I really appreciate you buddy reading this book with me. I'll link her channel down below, and I always enjoy Veronica's videos very, very much. This book is hard, painful, a grim book about a very important topic. First, I'd like to thank Jaclyn at 6 Minutes for me for bringing the book and Behrouz Boochani to my attention, and I'll link that first video in which she mentions him and her subsequent review of this book down below. Please give it a look. I also want to thank Njeri at ONYX Pages, because I sought out her channel and her videos to gather my thoughts for this one and to get inspiration. I'll also link her channel down below. This book documents the author's escape from Indonesia and his subsequent detention at what he renames Manus Prison, instead of the euphemistic media terms like detention center, quote unquote, and processing center, quote unquote. I've mentioned in a previous video that I could only get a letter from Manus Island, which is a very small booklet, after first hearing about Behrouz Boochani at Jaclyn's first video. But even that small booklet sent a powerful message about the plight of refugees. I really doubt that I can convey the impact that this book has had on me, but I'll try. And I'll try to be as brief as possible. At first, my buddy, Veronica, and I noticed that the writing style was very different from the strictly narrative style of nonfiction that I was used to. There were poems interspersed in the prose. A prose that was more stream of consciousness than a logging of events. And at first it seemed very, very odd. But as we continued, I got used to that fusion of prose and poetry, which later on the translator explains very, very well at the end of the book. The same translator describes this book and its style as horrific surrealism, and it is that. Because what Boochani describes is horrific, dehumanizing, despicable, cruel, vile, filthy, and overwhelming. In this fusion, in this writing style, he goes beyond, far beyond just mere genre bending. And it's done purposefully with complete intention. From the moment that Boochani mentions the prison's hierarchical system, and when I finally understood it, all sorts of synapses started going off in my head. I researched who first coined the term. It's mentioned in the book, hierarchy. It was coined by a feminist theologian called Elizabeth Schussler Fiorenza, who I, of course, Googled and read about online. In Wikipedia, you can do it too. And how that term, that concept, addresses intersectionality, which in turn is a concept from 1989 and Black feminist scholar Kimberly Williams Crenshaw. It's a concept that she explored since that time, and which Kazen at her channel, and I will link it down below, just mentioned. A book about her writings is coming out really soon. So the connections kept coming and kept exploding in my head. Plus the realization as I read this book that tenderness, compassion, kindness, empathy are all disdained and scorned and despised in the hierarchical systems. Bleeding heart liberals, anyone? And it continued blowing my mind. The translator's tale at the end of this book mentions the concept, another concept, of coloniality. Now, months ago, this was a newfangled term for me, and it had bothered me hearing it repeated over the radio since the first time that I heard it. It irked the heck out of me because I thought it was just one more jargon term from academia that none of these people from academia deigned to explain. So months back, I went searching for what this term, colonialidad en español, was all about. And I went online, and I even found some lectures on YouTube on coloniality, but couldn't understand a thing until I read this book. By the time I got to the end, to the translator's tale, my mind was prepared, fertilized for understanding what coloniality means, which is that colonialism is a perpetual process and a pervasive structure. It's the aftermath of colonialism that we carry with us even long after supposed colonialism has ended. I started to see the connections with other books. Like, for, of course, the previous Australian book that I read about another prison detention center, which is the fictionalized account, The Natural Way of Things by Charlotte Wood, in which you see a similar system of domination, oppression, and submission. I could see the hierarchy and the coloniality clearly in my Puerto Rican novel, La Llamarada, which I also finished, about the sugar plantations of the 1930s in Puerto Rico. And then Boochani was released on the 14th of this month, last week. Amy from Amygetslit sent me a link, and I will link Amy's channel down below. Please visit her if you don't know her and subscribe to her channel while YouTube, as we know it, still exists. Amy is wonderful. So Boochani's release made finishing this book even more meaningful and significant to me. And finally, this book has sharpened the way I see the world. I can never, ever see the world the same way again after reading this book. I'm even more determined than ever before. I had mentioned it in my previous video on nonfiction. I'm more than determined than ever before to read the prison canon. That canon of literature that's written from prison and detention. That includes Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning, which came to mind many, many times as I read this book. And as well as Dr. Martin Luther King's Letter from a Birmingham Jail, Mandela's writings. I want to read and learn more also about the Kurds and their history, their culture, as well as the so-called other stateless people around the world. That includes some right here in the Caribbean. There is so much that can be said about this book, about its language, about the concepts that it explores, what it documents, its testimony, and a short review can never do it justice. So I'll link some resources and some interviews on and about Behrouz Boochani down below. This book has become the #1 nonfiction book of 2019, if not of my whole life. It is definitely not an easy read. It deals with hard, grim, violent, harrowing themes. It is raw and ruthless, as a translator admits, but it is an important and necessary book. I'm profoundly grateful to have read it, and I hope that someday you may read it too. So thank you for your time. I appreciate it. Take care. Keep reading. Cuídense mucho, mi gente. Sigan leyendo. Adiós.